What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy, and today we are going to discuss fallen arches, or what other people might call it is flat feet. Now, before I jump into it, I want to talk a small bit about the work I'm doing at the moment, and I'll be taking on more clients in the new year. Is basically the majority of people that I work with are people who are struggling with an injury or an issue that's recurring and going on for over, let's say, 3 months to 10 to 15 years, up to 20 years, whatever it is. And the idea is that you jump on board, we do calls, there's a lot of education around the program, but then I give you a program to go away and work on. So you have like a mobility, strength, breathing program to work on, and then we can incorporate that with your gym work as well. And the idea is that first we need to, as these things have been going on for, let's say, longer than 3 months or 4 months, they're not going to fix in 2 weeks. So it takes a bit of time, it takes a bit of pushing and pulling, and it takes a good bit of education around what's going on, what the issue is, what's causing it as well. So if you are someone who's struggling with knee pain, with back pain, with hip pain or shoulder pain, and you've tried everything in the past and you've tried going to physio for 2 weeks or 2 or 3 physio sessions and it never worked for you, or even more, 6 physio sessions I know a lot of people have gone to, and it's not working, and you're going in, you're getting dry needling, you're getting massage, you're getting ultrasound, or you're just getting your back cracked and it only fixes it for a day or two, well then get in contact, send me an email at mobilityshooter@gmail.com, or you can just write to me on Instagram, or I actually have a form on Instagram that you can fill out. You can just talk through everything you're struggling with, and that way we'll all have a better idea. We'll jump on a call, see if we're a good fit for each other, and then if we are, we will make a plan and go forward with that. So if you are interested, let me know. But for this today, I guess for this episode of the podcast, what I want to talk about is flat feet, and I want to talk about the issue of people, I guess, making flat feet a bigger problem than what it actually is. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people write to me and they stem all their problems, or even clients that I have, or issues, back to having fallen arches or having flat feet or overpronated feet. And this could have developed over years, and that their belief behind it has probably come from a lot of like meetings with medical professionals or healthcare professionals telling them that they need to fix it, and that's the root of all their problems. And you hear a lot of people saying that obviously your feet are your first contact with the ground, and if they're affected, that's going to affect everything up along the chain. And there is some truth to this, but a lot of it is blown out of proportion. And just, I guess, the reason is that this condition generally doesn't, not condition, that's the wrong word, this mechanical change in the body doesn't happen overnight. It's something that's built up over 10 to 15 years. It could be something you were born with. And when that is the issue, well then usually the body has adapted to that and it's able to handle that. And it's not going to generally be an issue, because pain and mechanical issues aren't always connected to each other. They're not always related to each other. In that you could have rounded shoulders, you could have anterior tilt in your hips, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get back pain or you're going to get shoulder pain. So the same as flat feet doesn't mean that you're going to get knee injuries, hip injuries, or back problems. And the example that I always use is, if you look at Usain Bolt has some of the flattest feet that I've seen, especially in pictures, and he isn't doing too bad for himself in terms of athletic performance, considering that he is the fastest man that's ever lived. So I think that issue it can be blown out of proportion in a lot of situations. Now, why is it such an issue? Why does it become such an issue? Or why has it become such an issue in the media or in people's minds? Is that it goes back to this mechanical mindset of, if you look at the body and you see that there's a slight change in posture and we don't have a perfect posture, well, that's going to put more weight on something else, which is going to cause a lot more of a problem. Now, this can happen in the short term. So let's say if you sprain an ankle, the muscles above the ankle and the calf can start to give problems. The knee might give you a few issues, or the hip might give you a few issues. But that's within the days after. Okay, so that's very acute to call it, and it's not something that will last a long time because your body will adapt it. It's not optimal for your body to give you pain all the time because of a mechanical issue, so it will adapt it. And it's important to keep that in your head, that your body is obviously very adaptive. It's able to handle this stress or these stressors, and if you give it time to recover, it usually gets better. Now, the other side of things is that healthcare professionals often push this diagnosis because they don't have a good understanding of what's going on or what may be happening. So they'll look at you mechanically and they'll say, okay, well, your feet are flat, so that's causing your knee to cave in, which is going to cause an effect in your hip. It's going to affect your hip. It's going to cause more stress on your back. So the reason that your back is having trouble is because your feet are flat. Rarely is the case. Like almost never is that the case. And as I said, is because this has built up over years. So why does it just now start to cause back problems? Or why does it just now start to cause hip problems? Or let's say you've been having hip problems for the last 3 years, or 3 years. Well, why in the 10 to 15 years before that, or 20 years, did it never cause you a problem before? So it's usually that there's other things going on with that as well. And just trying to correct flat feet or fallen arches is not going to fix the other problems. So that's why we really need to look at what else could be contributing to the other issues that you're having. Now, the next thing is that it's pushed in the media a bit as well. And I don't mean that there's obviously not news reporters talking about it a lot, but you'll see advertising based around you need certain orthotics, you need to work on your feet and how the feet are always going to connect to everything in the body and they're the first contact to the ground. You'll see that on Instagram, you see that on Facebook, you'll see that everywhere. And it's generally, a physio or someone who has a vested interest in you having to change your feet that will push that. Now, I guess the other thing is it's become such a big problem that the likes of lifestyle sports and elderly sports, so sports shops, are now starting to give people orthotics because you go in, you've no injury at all, you start walking on a treadmill, they look at your walk, a person who was probably trained in a day course, 2-day course, whatever it is, they look at your walk and they look at your gait cycle and then they go to the computer and it shows that, oh, well, you're walking wrong here, here and here, so let's give them orthotics. So now this is the problem. Now something that you have built up a tolerance to over 20 to 30 years is getting fixed in a day by somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing. And I don't mean that as in like they don't know what they're doing, but they're just following what the machine says. They're following what a certain perfect posture and perfect gait cycle should look like, which is not a thing because everyone is so different. And anatomically, everyone is going to be so different in the way they walk and their postures and everything like that is going to be different. So how can a machine just tell you this is the way to walk now? And then they'll give them orthotics that will change the way they walk or change the way their foot contacts the ground. And they will give it to them to put it in their shoe and the thing is, I got these as well. So this is coming from, like, I had these when I was boxing. It was like, oh, well, it can do no harm. It can only be better for you. Then I started noticing I was getting these ankle pains and knee pains and all that from the orthotics that I started putting in because I didn't need them before that. So, and the thing was, at the time, it was actually, I was with my father and he was looking out for me. He was looking to obviously help me improve my performance. He was helping me to I guess, get better at my sport because he was one of my coaches as well. And when we went into lifestyle sports, we were going getting shoes and your man had just kind of basically sold it. This is what you need to do and you need to make sure that you're taking care of this. So I was like, well, I guess if it's going to help my performance, I better do it. So I did it and it caused me more problems than good because it was an acute change of my mechanics, which it didn't need. So that's a thing. Why are they such an issue? Is because everyone feels that, okay, now we need to look at the body like a mechanical, like a robot or like a car or whatever. If one thing is off, that affects everything else. And I'll be honest, I used to push that as well myself. I used to, when I didn't have an understanding of it, I used to push that a lot more. And I still have to obviously improve my knowledge around a lot of things in the body. But this mechanical mindset is really, really gone out of my frame of mind. I do take it into account, but it's not the primary driver of anything that I do. And that's going into a guy who has went into mobility specific stuff. And then I found out that a lot of this mobility specific stuff that they're trying to teach people, they're changing things that don't need to be changed, and they're causing problems or making problems out of things that aren't an issue. So then I kind of changed course on what I was doing. So even though it's like Mobility Shooter is a brand, I still talk about movement, I still talk about mobility, but a lot of it is based around what's optimal for you, and that's not what's optimal for everybody. And that's kind of the way I've changed it now. And it's a lot more of a holistic approach than just a mechanical movement approach. So, should you worry if you have flat feet or fallen arches? First off, no. Only if the arch is giving you an issue at the time, then you should maybe look at getting that worked on and getting that fixed. You're probably overloading it in some way. Or if it's a new onset, that you had good arches before and now they've just fallen out of nowhere, basically because you either got like a fracture, you've had like let's say a bone fracture or a break or an injury or whatever around that area, you've a ligament injury and now it's fallen, the muscles there got torn in the bottom of your foot and now it's fallen. That's more of an issue then, because it's an acute onset. It just happens out of nowhere, or happens after some type of an injury. Then you need to look at getting it fixed or getting it improved. But a lot of the time you'll see, and I say that, and I just disclaimer, bring that back a second, is that a lot of the time you won't have ever noticed that you ever had them before, and then you get a hamstring injury and a physio looks at it and tells you that's the problem, and then you're thinking, well, I didn't have this before, so now I have it, so it must be something that needs to be fixed. Well, that's not true. So it's good to give you that bit of a disclaimer. If it's not something that you've had before, or if it and it just comes on out of nowhere, then that's okay. But just because someone highlights it doesn't mean that it needs to be fixed. Now, how to fix them, or how not to fix them, is actually what I'll talk about, and then I'll talk about how you can work on them. So how not to fix them? Well, the first off is getting orthotics from Lifestyle Sports, just random orthotics or Ellery Sports, whatever it is. That's a guaranteed way to not fix it. And it's the same as what I always say about orthotics for fallen arches, is that like it's like putting a crutch in your shoe. Like a crutch can help you walk. It can, but if you're sitting there now and you're listening to this, do you honestly think a crutch is the best option all the time? No, it's not. So it should only be used when it needs to be used, and then gotten rid of as early as possible and as quick as possible, because it's not beneficial long term. So that's why I say like orthotic a lot of the time is like putting a crutch in your shoe to fix it, and it doesn't need to be fixed a lot of the time. So I would avoid orthotics as much as possible, especially if you I heard one last year about a guy who was with the team. I won't name the team now or anything, and they got this new therapist in, and this new therapist was connected to a podiatrist, so basically he brought everyone in, and I don't know if he was getting commission or what it was, but there was before the year started, there was no one on the team that had orthotics, or very few. After it, nearly half the team were lined up to get these new orthotics, 300 quid as well for them. So there's definitely, you need to be careful with that. If people are going one way, if they're focusing on something too much, then you need to look at why that's happening, I guess. So circle back. With them, they can be very effective. Now, I'm not going to knock orthotics completely, because they can be very effective in different situations. I know that we had, when I was working in one of the hospitals, that we had a guy come in who was in a motorbike accident and had fractured his leg, had a compound fracture, so it came out through the skin, and it had happened to him 10 or 15 years ago, and they had used orthotics to help manage it, and they were reducing the size of them over time, so his body would be able to adapt to because he had a leg length discrepancy. In this case, it was a leg length discrepancy caused by a fracture. So obviously that's a big difference than you just being born with a leg length discrepancy, because you'll build up a tolerance to that. But over time, they were reducing the size of his orthotic so that his body would get used of walking without them. That was the goal. It wasn't just give him orthotics and this is what you have for the rest of your life. And they were reducing it so he could start to walk properly, and it wouldn't be as much of a change for his body, and that he could adapt to that over time. So it was useful in that situation, because it was obviously he was going normally, massive, multiple injuries in his leg, multiple fractures, compound ones. bone was coming out through the leg. So they obviously reconstructive surgery and different things like that to help fix it. And then the orthotics were very, very, very helpful in getting him to adjust back to walking again normally. So that's one way of that they will be needed. But in general, orthotics are not needed for fallen arches or flat feet. The other thing is having somebody reset your feet, where you're cracking them. Or I heard someone wrote to me on Instagram last week and asking me what my opinion was, that their brother had back pain and they went to I don't know what it was, who I could have been, I don't know what it was anyway, but who basically cracked out their feet and fixed their feet and fixed their back pain. Then that has a lot more to do with their feet being fixed and the back pain being fixed. First, there's, to not get into a lot of details on it, there's a lot around that in beliefs and how much of a belief you have in the person who is fixing you. And now your body will react to that. And it'll, like when you go to someone and they crack your back and then you're saying, oh, geez, I feel great again. It's not because your back is realigned. It's because you had a lot of belief in that person to fix you. You heard the crack. You thought that was the issue initially. And then it felt better. But they're only short-term benefits. They'll only last a small while unless you take care of the underlying issues. And it's important to understand that. So having someone to reset your feet or to shape your shoes are probably not a great way to fix them. Now, there are other issues. I'm talking about fallen arches here specifically, bunions, stuff like that. You can take care of them mechanically as well. You need to, or you don't need to, but it's you can do it. And sometimes having bigger, wider shoe is better for that. But in general, having someone crack your feet into place and fix your feet and massage your feet so they're better is a short-term fix. How you actually can work on them is work on building strength through your foot, because the arch is a series of muscles. It's obviously anatomical as well, and it's the joint of your foot. There's a lot of things involved in it, but if you work on building strength in those intrinsic muscles, the smaller muscles of the feet as well as the bigger muscles, then you have a better chance of building up the strength of your feet. And the thing is, you're not trying to work on fallen arches specifically here. You're trying to build stronger feet that are more adaptable and able to handle and tolerate more load and distribute load more effectively. That's what you're looking to do. And that's the same as you're building stronger hips by going to the gym. You're building a stronger back by deadlifting. You're building stronger shoulders by whatever, benching, overhead pressing, all that. So all these things are important, and you always need to look to build more strength because it's obviously very useful. And gripping stuff with your feet, walking on your toes, and just getting barefoot, like that's a huge thing to do. If you can just walk barefoot, you'll fix a lot of things, especially with your feet that are wrong with your feet. Walking barefoot on different surfaces, grass, tiles, sand, getting in swimming and just kind of moving your feet around in the water. All those basic things will help. Picking up marbles off the ground, gripping a towel, all those will help. Then you need to look at, are you stuck in a pronated position because you're not used to getting into pronation and into supination? Pronated position is when your foot basically lies flat on the ground, and we need to be able to get into both. We need to be able to get into pronation and out of pronation, into supination and out of supination. Really, you go from one to the other and into neutral. But getting first off the bare feet walking on bare feet and walking on your toes and all that will improve this, but you may need to practice that a small bit more as well, getting in and out of it yourself, practicing getting in and out of it, working on movements that will help you do that. And then that will mean that your arch is less stuck, to use a better word, for lack of a better word, and you will have a bit more movement in your foot. Then you need to look at balance, coordination, exercises where you're doing different activities like catching a ball, throwing it off a wall while you're standing on one leg, different things like that to work the foot a small bit more, just so it basically is getting more movement through it, and it is helping the foot and the body work in conjunction together. So because they obviously do need to work together, nothing works in isolation. So doing things like when you're multitasking, stuff like that, can help a lot with clearing up these issues. So I guess that's the basis of it, guys. I don't want to drag on too much longer. I hope that it gives you a better understanding of it. Realistically, is it a problem? Like, people are afraid of them. They believe it'll cause different mechanical events up along the chain. It's backed by health professionals a lot, and some people can connect it to every issue that they have, and that's the problem, is when you start connecting it to other things that have just come on, and now you start connecting it back to something that you've had your entire life. Then the beliefs can become ingrained, and even though they're not true, when they get ingrained, you start to believe it, your body will start to react. And I've done loads of podcasts on that, of how that can happen and what can happen and how your beliefs can affect you. So definitely go back and check those other ones if you're interested in that stuff. But in a general sense, they aren't that much of an issue, because the mechanical side of things is not as related to pain. Flat feet are rarely an issue, but orthotics actually can become an issue. So trying to fix flat feet for no reason, with using different adjuncts like orthotics, adding basically what I said is a crutch to it, that can become an issue then. The reason being it's not as much of an issue, and why the mechanical doesn't relate to pain, is because it generally develops over time, whether it's genetics, weakness, stuck in pronation, just your sport, how you move. As I said, Usain Bolt has flat feet, and he isn't doing too bad for himself, especially when it comes to using his feet and running. So it does develop over time, and it's not always connected to other issues. So it doesn't mean, though, this is the next thing is what I want. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't work on them. You still need to build strength in your body and build strength through the chain, just as an injury prevention method in general. It's an excellent way, and for longevity and making sure that you're keeping strong. So strength and mobility is always important in that regard. I'm not saying that you just disregard it altogether, but don't get overwhelmed by it. Don't just connect everything to it because you have them. And that's the real thing. So assess what's contributing to your other issues. Like if it is a knee pain, if it is hip pain, if it is back pain or shoulder pain or whatever you're feeling, make sure to look at those issues and change them slightly. Or not change them, I should say. Make sure to figure out what's contributing to them. You might have to work with them all together. It might be a full body approach, or you might need to isolate. And just getting a better understanding of what's contributing to it with your stress, your sleep and all that, and how you're moving will give you a better understanding what is actually, I guess, the main factors that you need to take control of or need to take care of. So that is everything I wanted to chat about today, guys and girls, and hopefully it gives you a bit more insight into, are they that much of a problem, or when are they a problem, and when should you take care of them, and then as well as how you can actually work on them a small bit more. If anyone is having problems with this and they feel that it's coming from that, definitely get in contact with me. Send me a message and we'll jump on a call and we can chat about it. If you're having other issues, knee pain, hip pain, back pain, and you've been given some kind of random diagnosis that doesn't add up, like your, let's say, glutes aren't firing, you have flat feet, you have a bulging disc, stuff like that, they're common ones that I always hear. You have a cartilage injury in your hip, things like that usually is a lot more involved in it than just that. Well, then just get me or send me a message on Instagram. You can either fill out that form or you can just ask me any questions that you may have. I don't hesitate with that at all. And yeah, send me an email as well at mobilitytutor@gmail.com, and then we can discuss it in a bit more detail, and you'll have a better idea of what to do going forward. So yeah, outside of that, guys, I would love if you could, first off, I was going to say, if you have anyone that you want me to get on the podcast, send me a message and I will try my best to get them on, or as best as I can. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love if you could send it on to a friend who may be struggling with this issue. I would also love if you could share it on your story. That would help a lot. It just helps get the name of the podcast out there a bit more, gives it that bit more exposure. I then, to be honest, what happens a lot then is people will say, I was referred this podcast, could you do a topic, or could you talk about this a bit more? And then it gives me different ideas of what topics people want to chat about, and I guess more people who are struggling with the same issues will get a better understanding of what's going on, because I know a lot of people who have been writing to me have taken bits and pieces from the podcast, or taken a lot from the podcast, and it seems to be helping people. So to keep it going, I like to just, I suppose, get more exposure to it. So if you could, I'd love if you could share it on your story or send it to a friend. Outside that, if you're on iTunes, just please rate it, whatever you think it is. That would be great. And add a comment there just to let me know what you like about it, what you'd like to see more of, anything like that. That goes a long way. And subscribe to it. But yeah, that I suppose is everything I wanted to chat about. I hope everyone is doing well. It's coming around Christmas time now when this podcast is getting out, so I hope everyone is getting ready for that. And that, I guess, is everything I can think of for now. So have a good one, guys. I will chat to you all again soon. I'll chat to you all again next week. Hopefully get more guests on in the next while. But that's everything. Have a good one.